All right, we've fed all the horses. We've talked about what they need for water. We've talked about what they need for annual routine care and their teeth and their deworming and their vaccinations. But now we're going to talk about what we do with 80% of the rest of the time, which is the actual training and working with them. So right now, with our week off and me working with all the horses, I go through these doors probably about 14 to 28 times a day. So let me just go take you through what that looks like. So typically for each of our horses during during our scheduled lessons in our session, they have a maximum of 10 lessons per week. So each horse gets to use at least once and maximum 10 times. We've got all our lights on. Most of you should be fairly familiar with what it looks like in here. Let me just take you up to my whiteboard for today. So this is what my day looks like today. So I started at 7 and I rode my own horse O'Malley because I like to get him done and out of the way for the day. And then from there on, we worked with Solo, Arwen, Kit, Lily, Blizzard, and Abe. And then once we're done taking this video, I'm gonna do Princess, Gavin, and Taylor. So that is all the horses that I'll be working for today. I was actually very thankful to have Heidi's help today. She did 5 horses for me. So she did Paris and, who else did we do? Paris and George and Gigi, and she was actually the one that did Solo. So we were able to get through all the horses today, and it's only 2 o'clock. So let me take you on over here. So up here, just because we have all the pictures of the horses, it'll be easy to talk about them. So I'll go through what a typical week in the life of Abe looks like for training and lesson-wise. So Abe, our little guy up here, so last session he had 4 lessons every week. So then that leaves me with up to 5 more training sessions to be able to have him work, or actually 6 more training sessions so that he's used a maximum of 10 times in a week. Typically, I would work with him 2 times a week, just because I have to have enough time to get to everyone else as well. But what that would look like for him is he would have his 4 lessons, and then on top of that, 1 training session with him, I would do a groundwork session, and that's going to help with him being able to be led in his lesson so that he's very respectful of personal space. He stops when you want him to stop, he goes when you want him to go, and he turns when you want him to turn from a leading perspective. And then his second session would be an under saddle session. So that would be for his more independent riders or riders working towards being independent, that he goes when they want him to go and he turns when they want him to turn. And to also keep him fit and ready to be doing all that work with his lesson students, because sometimes in our lessons, we usually do walk trot, but horses also have a third gait called a canter. So Abe is fairly green, which means he's still learning how to canter, but soon I want him to be able to be ready to canter in lessons and teach his students how to canter. So that's something big that I've been working on with him, is how to canter under saddle. And he's gotten much, much better. He used to canter with his eyes bugging out of his head like a deer caught in the headlights, but now he's much more respectful about it and actually quite good at it. He needs a little bit more practice before it's ready for lessons, but that's a big thing that I've been working for with him, and to get him ready as we work with Special Olympics to start doing some more dressage and some more jumping to really get him trained to the point where he can start teaching his riders how to do that as well. And we'll take another horse, for example. Let's do George. George is a good one because I am actually way too tall to ride George. When I ride him, my ankles are around his knees. So with him, I do a lot of groundwork, because when he came to us, he actually didn't understand how to canter. Because he was a cart horse for the longest time, they aren't allowed to canter. They can only walk and trot when they're attached to the cart. So I actually had to train him from the ground how to canter. And so I do a lot of working with him on his patience, because he likes to go all the time. So a lot of what I do with him is being patient and waiting for me to tell him what to do rather than him just trying to guess what I want him to do. So we work a lot on standing at the mounting block and being patient, and then I'll work with him on the lunge line to get him exercise, walk, trot, and canter.
Does he get as many sessions with you as Abe would? Are each horse kind of get a different amount of time from you depending on where they're at in their training?
So it really depends on where they're at. Right now, because there's no lessons, I'm working with each horse at least 3 times a week, 4 to 5, depending on which horse it is. So for example, where's Bob's picture? Bob, he is our greenest or least experienced horse, so he gets the most time spent with him because he has the most to learn. So to make sure he's ready for the lesson program, he needs the most time spent working on his manners and his training so that he can teach his students to ride rather than the other way around. But let's say Arwen, she is probably our most experienced lesson horse, so she needs the least amount of time. More of what I do with her is to make sure she's good and fit and ready to carry her riders in her lessons, but that she's also nice and stretched out and that her muscles aren't tight and that she's working effectively to carry her riders. Let's see, who else? Paris is another good one because she was off for quite a while due to head shaking. So she's actually coming back into work. So a lot of what I'm doing with her is retraining her muscles and getting her muscles fit again so that she can carry her riders. Because right now her back is very under-muscled, which means she's not very strong right now. So she needs a lot of strength and conditioning before she's going to be able to really start jumping and cantering with her riders again, which is something she really likes doing, but she gets very sweaty. Let's see.
And how do you do, like when there's a full schedule of lessons, how do you fit in? Is it a real balancing act? Are you trying to, when you're not being an instructor, you run out and you take a couple horses? Like, is it a balancing act to be able to train all the horses every week and be an instructor and be everything that encompasses being an equine manager for Hope Haven?
It is a little bit of a balancing act, but everything that I do here piggybacks off of itself. So when I'm being an instructor, I'm still able to work with each horse as I'm teaching the lesson, and I'm still able to see each horse so I can manage sort of what they're eating and what their workload looks like. But two, it is a bit of a juggling act so that when I'm not teaching, someone else is likely teaching in the arena, especially when there's snow outside, trying to find time to make sure I can get those horses their 2 sessions a week. Or for Bob, sometimes 4 sessions a week. That's a little bit of a juggling act when we have a fully booked lesson session. But two, again, as it piggybacks off of being an instructor, I'm still able to work with them in the lessons that I teach, just from a different perspective. So I'm still able to get the time in with them that I need to, but it definitely is a bit of a balancing act. Any other questions?
I think we can maybe hand it off to the volunteers that are online. So I think that, in closing, there's so much that you do in a day, in a week, and everything that goes with the feeding. So if you were to leave the volunteers with one thought of when they show up here, all kind of when it comes to everything that we've covered that you would like to leave them with, and then maybe we can add that to our discussion afterwards.
I think if I were to leave the volunteers with one thing of all the things we talked about today, I think it would be that there is so much more to looking after a horse than one might think, especially when I first started riding. I showed up for my lesson and I was like, this is fun, and then I went home and that was it. But then as I started riding more and spending more time at the barn, I was like, oh, like their diets really need to be managed, and oh, their exercise really needs to be managed, and wow, water's really important. It was kind of mind-blowing to me that all of these little pieces kind of fit together, and it's so important, each of them individually. Just that I think to really keep an open mind and to always want to keep learning, because it's always, every little bit you can pick up is going to be able to help each horse that you work with. So I think, yeah, just to have an open mind and always keep learning.